Hi, my name is Steve Hanson. I'm president and CEO and also founder of ACME Lithium, a North American lithium company with a portfolio of projects in the United States and in Canada.
Steve, thanks for coming back on. Appreciate it. We spoke back in May, but you've been busy. You raised or concluded the raising some money after we last spoke. So how did that go, and where did it come from?
Well, we were very fortunate, Matthew, in that we were able to raise some additional funds in what has been a very difficult spring and now summer marketplace. But we have the support of some key institutional investors. And we actually had a decent amount of capital when I went out for this raise. A couple of our institutional clients were interested in continuing to add to our coffers. And so again, we were fortunate actually to raise additional capital. It was actually more than what we intended to, but now looking at it, it was a very good idea at this time. We're in really good shape from a running room standpoint. We've got no debt, no preferred shares. And again, we're sitting on a war chest of capital that will allow us to not only explore multiple projects this year in 2022, it'll give us running room into 2023. And so in this kind of investment climate, we're in really good shape as a company.
Yeah, I think it answers the question, or the debate we have quite often is, when to take money. And I always go, take it when it's there. Because you know what's coming around the corner, certainly not in these markets. Just want to understand it a little bit. You'll see, you took two types of money. You did a private placement as well in there. Why did you split it up like that?
So there is a mechanism in Canada, and it's called a flow-through financing, and really it's a tax incentive financing for investors. The money that's raised has to be deployed in Canada, and really it's to again, incentivize investors and companies to deploy capital nationally in Canada in the resource sector. So a portion of the capital we raised, again, it's straight equity. We will deploy that capital into the ground in our Manitoba projects. And then we raised also some additional equity through a private placement that we can use at our Nevada projects. So again, it's straight equity. It allows us to expand our projects and aggressively go after drill programs this fall. And again, we're really excited about delivering on some key catalysts here in 2022 and into early 2023.
Right. Okay. So now we know you've got money, and we know that you've got options on that front. Just want to remind people that the type of company that we're talking to, because not everyone who there'll be a bunch of people who listened to the last time we caught up. There'll be some people who haven't. So you are explorers who advance projects through and then kind of, bring partners in. How would you describe your model?
Well, I've been in the resource sector for almost 30 years. I've worked on all 4 continents around the world, from Kenya to Mongolia to Argentina to Mexico and everywhere in between. My background's mainly been in finance, but I've been CEO of a number of companies. I've been on boards and I've been an advisor to boards. But my DNA really is as an investor. I've invested in 200 to 300 projects over the course of my career. So my goal as CEO here and vision here is to bring shareholder value and to align our capital raising milestones with the corporate milestones. And really my job is to surround myself with a phenomenal team, which I believe I've done, and de-risk these projects over time. We have 4 projects, 2 in Nevada, 2 in Southeastern Manitoba in Canada. They're world-class projects. They're regionally located very well. And what I mean by that is they're located amongst areas where there actually is lithium mining and processing. And there's only a handful of places in North America where that takes place. And one of them is in Clayton Valley, Nevada, at Silver Peak. It's the only place where lithium is produced in the United States. And we have a project directly northwest of that facility, which we've recently drilled. This is a lithium brine well. We're one of the only lithium brine well drillers that have drilled in the United States in recent years. We completed that drill program in early July, and now we are waiting on results. So we're expecting those results sometime in August. So a really major milestone coming up for us at ACME Lithium. And again, we're hopeful that we'll have the results that will deliver value to shareholders.
Got it. And I think you probably got ahead of me there a little bit. I just want to be clear with people exactly how you create value, because all CEOs come on here and say, we're going to create value, we're going to advance projects, etc. But really specifically, you are explorers who take a project through to what phase?
So throughout my career, we are risk takers in that we enter into projects at a fairly early stage. We are explorers. We use a variety of techniques, obviously, to de-risk the project. Our ultimate goal is obviously to initially make discovery and then ultimately get to a resource calculation. But what I've done with many companies in my past is I bring in larger strategic partners at a certain stage that have the capital, the deep pockets, the wherewithal and know-how to advance these projects into production. So, there's a number of exit strategies that can be created. You can joint venture with obviously a major company, or there's M&A activity. And really as a small team and a small company, there are many companies within this battery metal space that are aggressively pursuing these types of opportunities. And whether they be commodity miners, technology companies, off-takers, and even now the auto manufacturers, we're seeing these types of companies come into juniors at an earlier stage, the earliest stage that I've seen in my career. And really what it says is about the desperation for lithium as a commodity. So again, my track record is to develop projects, de-risk them to a stage where a major company is interested in pursuing it as a joint venture or ultimately an M&A activity.
Cool. Okay, brilliant. Understood. I just want people to understand this because we get lots of companies come on that talk the same game and it's really hard to differentiate them. I want to be clear with you. Okay, because I enjoyed the last conversation. Okay, recent news. You've been drilling at Clayton Valley. It's a brine project. And let's remind people, you've got Fish Lake, which is clay, and you kind of got hard rock down in Manitoba. So you've got a lot going on there. So would this be fairly unique in the sense that it's the first brine project being drilled in the US for some time or ever? I mean, where are you positioning that?
There are a handful of brine projects in the US. Certainly Clayton Valley, there's a couple other companies that have drilled brine wells in the last couple of years. There is some activity in Utah in going after brine. And certainly if you look at the Salton Sea in California, where General Motors is involved, you're seeing some extraction from potentially brine there. And then you actually are seeing some activity from a brine standpoint in the oil and gas regions of North America. They're very early stage, but you're seeing activity in Alberta and now in Texas and Oklahoma, where companies are going after water wells that were previously oil and gas wells that now they're looking to extract lithium in those cases. But from a pure sort of ancient lake bed, drilling into brine and extracting lithium in brine, there's only a handful of companies that are doing that today. And that's really because lithium isn't found in many places. Brine is one of the core areas of where lithium is extracted in South America. Most of the lithium extracted in Chile and Argentina comes from brine. Brine has some great advantages in that your capital costs are much lower. You don't have to drill like a pincushion and drill 40, 50, 60, 70 holes. You only have to drill a handful of basically water wells to ultimately get to a resource. So our capital costs are lower. And now with new technology called DLE, direct lithium extraction, you can put a plant on a facility and extract lithium through those means. So again, some great advantages to brine from a long-term perspective in ultimately reaching an economic resource.
Well, let me talk to you about that because, let's say you've been around the block a bit. We had the ex-chairman of Albemarle on, and he was less than complimentary about DLE as a technology, commercial technology. Are you seeing, or do you feel that is coming down the line? That is going to be commercial, or in a very meaningful way, do you not care because you will find the partner that extracts lithium from your project in the best way possible?
Well, I think that new technology has really changed a number of industries. We see it in oil and gas. Obviously there was a period of time where older fields throughout the southern United States and certainly in Western Canada, where everyone thought that commodities had been extracted, and yet it's actually new technology that changed those basins and created a multi-decade opportunity for the oil and gas industry. Again, it was new technology that changed all that. And I think we'll continue to see that in the mining industry, and in particular in the lithium industry. New technology changes, how we are able to do things in a more environmentally and sustainable way, but also in a way that's more cost effective. So, DLE, there's a number of companies that are well financed, that are working on new technology in Latin America, but also in the United States and Canada, whether it be out of Houston or San Diego or other regions that are again well financed, and again they're testing out pilot plants. And I expect that there'll be a number of companies that'll be in production with DLE technology over the next few years. We believe that ultimately we'll get there, and in fact, one of our neighbors is utilizing DLE technology on a discovery they made, and it's a partnership between Schlumberger and Panasonic. We know them well. We're watching them very closely. And again, their belief, two very large companies, well known, their belief that DLE ultimately will be effective in extracting lithium. So I think technology, in a lot of cases around the world, in what we've seen, will change things. There was a time when a battery in a vehicle was the size of a bus, and it was absolutely massive and a huge cost. Well, again, through research and development and effective use of capital, we've now gotten to the stage where batteries are now being used to power vehicles and bikes and all sorts of things at a small and cost-effective way. So, again, I don't want to discredit what the senior executive at Albemarle said, but I believe that technology will change things dramatically for the future for the good, because we are in desperate need of being able to extract lithium. And I think that, again, we'll continue to see advancements in this area.
Okay, so well capitalized. Now we need to see the commercial component, i.e., can you make money doing it using DLE? So, and like I say, technology does advance, and we'll all be looking out for that, because we need all of the above, right? All good. Now back to your project. Obviously, you've been doing that work at Clayton. When do we start to see the results of that work?
Samples were sent to the lab in early July, and again, we're expecting to see results sometime towards the end of August. Again, this is one of the biggest catalysts for us. We're hoping to obviously make a discovery here, and really it's key here is we're into brine. We know we're into the aquifer. We're into the right intervals or horizons. We've got the right host. Really the question is are we going to have economic grade lithium? So again, expecting a key milestone and hopefully a catalyst here to take place sometime towards the end of the summer.
Okay. And just sticking with the DLE component, because I'm intrigued by these things. You've got a US government that's talking heavily about, battery technology and investments into the whole thematic of battery and green energy as well, but not a lot moving at a pace there. So obviously there's a slight lag to what they say and what they do. In a state like Nevada, obviously lots of lithium companies in there, Tesla's in there, some leaders in the industry, we shall say. How's the state reacting in terms of supporting you, whether that be financially or adapting mining rules to make it just a little bit more accessible and a little bit more affordable in an environment like we're seeing at the moment? Or again, is that lacking?
Well, Nevada has been named recently actually the #1 mining jurisdiction in the world, and it has continued to have a long history in the resource sector. What's great about Nevada is that you can work there 12 months of the year. There's good infrastructure, power, roads. There's lots of great technical people as well and consultants. So, as a jurisdiction, Nevada is excellent for us to be operating. But really the question comes down to where we're going to see bottlenecks is at the permitting level. And we really have to be good citizens and stewards of the environment. And really the key here is for us to have the lowest impact possible as we develop our projects. And DLE fits into that strategy. Again, the footprint that's used is much smaller. There's environmental advantages to DLE. There's less water use. You're not using massive brine ponds, which has been traditionally what's been used. So in Albemarle's Silver Peak project has massive brine ponds. And again, I think we're going to see the requirement really to move to a more environmentally friendly and sustainable technology to have the lowest impact possible. So, from a government regulation standpoint, this past spring, President Biden invoked the Defense Production Act around critical minerals such as lithium. And this was the first time that this has been done in the history of the United States, and really says about the crisis that the U.S. is facing for a domestic supply of lithium. And part of that Defense Production Act is the creation of a $750 million fund. Part of that capital will be used to assist in the permitting process. It'll be partly used to work on new technology for research and development. But again, I believe the biggest bottleneck is going to be at the state and municipal level, in ensuring that permits move along without a lot of red tape. And I'm not suggesting that anything should be shortened or removed from barriers. I just believe that governments need to put the resources into these departments, and probably in the way of more people, to ensure that these things are put through in a timely manner. And that's what I'm hopeful for, is that with this crisis for this commodity happening in Canada, the United States, that governments put more resources into these various departments, so that, again, all the boxes can be ticked because they're supposed to be ticked. We need to be, responsible here and ensure that all those environmentally and sustainable activities are looked after. But hopefully there'll be resources put into it so that the red tape and the system starts to develop in a faster way.
Right, but I guess the fallback on this is the brine lakes, because that's already operating in state. Because what we've seen in the renewable sector is the fact that we've got massive graveyards of solar panels and wind turbine blades which can't be recycled, and there's a narrative going on in there about, well, maybe we should have done a little bit more work at the beginning. Are you cognizant, or are you understanding of the fact that perhaps in terms of filters and membranes on the DLE technology, is that kind of inquiry needed to make sure that we're kind of feeding into the right kind of technology solution?
Well, absolutely. I mean, again, impact is really important to us as a company from a philosophical standpoint. We want to make sure that we, are stewards of the land as well, and that we look at all stakeholders who are interested in our projects. Again, I believe that DLE as a technology, as it develops, is going to be the most sustainable way for us to manage a project, assuming that we ultimately make a discovery at our projects for brine. Again, the footprint's smaller. We are able to put water through an injection well back into the aquifer. We're not seeing massive evaporation ponds like you're seeing around the world. So again, that is our vision for the future. I mean, we believe that DLE is going to be the way that many companies ultimately will go that are managing brine projects in the United States. And again, the ultimately thing is, how do we recycle as well? How do we take care of these facilities in ensuring that any of the technology we use has some ability to recycle? So, we will continue to evaluate those. We're in constant dialogue with a number of the DLE companies that are out there. They're highly interested in taking a closer look at our project. And again, hopefully we can advance those conversations as we develop our project in Clayton Valley.
Okay, fantastic. And we've talked about Fish Lake is parked up for now, but with the clays there, you'll come back to that maybe at the end of the year or maybe next year, think about what's going on there. But what you have done is you've activated or certainly commenced the exploration program in Southeastern Manitoba. Again, what are you trying to do there? What's on the books?
Well, the reason why I focused on Southeastern Manitoba is there actually is an existing lithium, cesium, and tantalum mine called the Tanko mine, and it's been there off and on producing since 1969. And we were fortunate to secure two projects, one a couple kilometers south of the Tanko mine. We actually are their southern neighbor and border their mineral leases. And then we have another project about 15 kilometers to the north. And we began in early July a major and active exploration program. We have lots of boots on the ground, sampling right now. So there's chip and till sampling going on, soil sampling. And then in parallel to that, we have a fairly large airborne geophysics program ongoing. So those two programs are happening in parallel. They'll ultimately lead to what we believe is multiple targets for drilling, and then we hope to get drilling sometime in the fourth quarter of 2022. So again, a fairly active program happening in southeastern Manitoba in parallel to what's happening in Clayton Valley as we wait for results. And in fact, I just gave the green light to start doing some work in Fish Lake Valley, as you mentioned, which is the valley over from Clayton Valley to the west. And so we're going to begin some exploration there as well, starting sometime in August. So, again, we're going to be active. We've got the capital to do that. And again, a number of ways to certainly offer opportunity to our shareholders.
Right. Okay. So lots of activity, and we'll hear back from the labs with regards to the brine, Clayton Lake. Clayton Lake. Over at Clayton Valley soon. We'll start up Q4 on the Manitoba stuff. Good. Can we just talk a little bit about the market? Because I've kind of dug in with regards to kind of the environmental component and sort of people the conversations that are going on out there, but even if you're a buyer of the thesis, you need to sort of understand the kind of pace at which this is moving. And it seems to be after a kind of lull, at the beginning of last year, kind of took off towards the end of last year and beginning of this. And it's gone quiet again, obviously, with the rest of the markets. But it's gone quiet in the sense that the equities markets have gone quiet. But in terms of movement, investment, and JVs from industry who are quietly planning their 5, 10, 20-year cycles and trying to work out where they get their metals from, they've been busy, very busy out there. That must give you encouragement.
Well, I attended the Fast Markets Lithium Conference in the United States at the last couple of days of June, and in what was, as you say, a very, very difficult spring and early summer market from an equity standpoint. And it was a very active conference. There was close to 600 people attending, and it was solely focused on lithium. And there was players from around the world, from Germany to Korea to China to Argentina, and lots of representatives, obviously, from Canada and the United States, from major producers to explorers like us to technology companies and auto manufacturers. And there was a buzz going on at this conference. There was a lot of discussion about where is our industry heading, and what has been, I guess, maybe not as much of a surprise, but what I've seen certainly over the last year is I've seen end buyers looking at smaller companies or earlier stage companies and start dialogue at a earlier stage than I've ever seen in my 30-year career. So, when General Motors or a major Japanese offtake company starts talking with smaller companies, and they're looking at 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the road as to what their supply needs are, it really does say a lot about the fact that there is just an absolute demand out there for this commodity. And again, I have not seen this in my career in a commodity where you're seeing institutional strategic investors looking at an earlier stage at companies. So it's really quite interesting. Even though we're seeing some difficult times in the equity markets, there's a lot of activity happening in our space. We saw some recent M&A activity in the last couple of weeks. Ganfeng, a large Chinese company, agreed to acquire an Argentina lithium company for close to $1 billion. We saw Ford this past week commit to investing in Ioneer, which is an Australian company. They're actually our neighbor in Fish Lake. They are contiguous to our east. We're only about 4 kilometers away from their mine in Fish Lake Valley. It's called Rhyolite Ridge, and Ford has agreed to joint venture and invest in that project. And they signed a major offtake agreement where they believe that will they'll be able to get a very major lithium supply for their needs over the next period of time. Ford's investing what is estimated to be $50 billion in their EV and hybrid division. They've made that announcement recently as well. So we're seeing a lot of activity in the sector in spite of what's been happening in the equity markets. And I think that's going to continue. We're going to continue to see consolidation. We're going to continue to see M&A activity and joint ventures from strategic and institutional investors in this space. Capital is going to continue to flow into this with to the right companies who have first-class projects.
I think what I agree with all of that, and I think the interesting observation we've made in this is that industry, the OEMs or the battery manufacturers, also sort of the groups like Ganfeng who also have the kind of technical expertise, can't rely on the capital markets to fund these companies, because there was a kind of growth spurt, I think 2017, and then there's a kind of sort of a lull because capital markets weren't funding pilot plants, they weren't funding demonstration plants, and I think that kind of feels to me like industry sort of stepping in and going, well, if we are to look after our own future, perhaps we're going to have to use our own balance sheets. And it's nice to see them kind of stepping up to the plate, as it were. But all that said, you've got to have a plan for yourself about how you insert yourself into that ecosystem. You've explained what your business model and your thesis is for allowing you to do that. Clearly, with Clayton Valley, that's going to be the flagship project for you. It's early days. So how much of this money that you raised, I mean, a combination of combined, $5.7 million back in May. What do you do with that to enhance or accelerate your story and what you're doing into that ecosystem?
Well, as you mentioned, we raised some capital in the springtime. We actually had capital, and I found in my career it's easier to raise money when you actually have money, and when you're on fumes, it's a lot harder. And so we are sensitive to dilution. And again, I've been able to raise capital in our company at a much higher valuation and a higher share price every round of financing that we've raised capital. And again, we've been fortunate that we have some very astute and patient investors that have continued to write checks with us institutionally. So again, I'm very proud of that what we've been able to accomplish. We have about $11.5 million in the bank. I'll spend $2 to $3 million in Clayton Valley this year. This assumes that we have good sample results coming up here in August. I don't know what they are, but again, we already have to plan for how we're going to spend capital based on success. So I'll spend another $2 to $3 million this year in Clayton Valley. We have a fairly major program in Manitoba. I'll spend between $3 to $4 million in Manitoba leading into the first quarter of 2023. So what it does give me is it gives me some additional capital that I can deploy on other projects or possibly deploy in Fish Lake Valley. And it really does give me running room. If we have a difficult equity market, this continues for another 6 months or a year, I'm in good shape in that I can last. We can continue to have major milestones within our company with the capital that we have. We can, catalysts can take place. We can advance the development of our business with the capital we have. And then when the markets come back and the right time is appropriate, we certainly can go back and raise additional capital as needed. Again, we're in good shape. I've got a very planned use of proceeds of where we're going to deploy capital, and we can deliver with the cash that we have on hand.